You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
They had to garner these huge audiences before they decide to quit their job, or else they don't have, like we were saying before, the merchandise, and they don't have the audience that'd be willing to support them if they start a new project or something like that. I mean, who's going to really want to, like, how often do you hear about the double rainbow guy?
Hey everyone, thanks again for hitting that play button. It's another episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast. Before I get to the interview with Joe Kowalski, I just want to say very quickly, if you enjoy this episode or any of the other episodes of this podcast, please hit that subscribe button. Again, the podcast is on Podbean, it's on iTunes, and it's also on Stitcher. And if you're listening to this on an Android device, there's free apps like Podcast Republic or Podcast Addict that actually would help you, listen to the show, because if you download the app and subscribe to the feed on there, you'll get all the episodes. And again, subscribers get the episodes at least 1 to 2 days early. And also, if you want to help with this podcast, please leave a review on iTunes if you feel so obligated to. And there's also a ton of links in the show notes about other ways you could help support this podcast. Most of which are actually free. Again, it's just about, getting the word out there. And if you do, I really appreciate it. And always feel free to drop me a line. If you go to DaveBullis.com, there's a contact form for me, or tweet me. It's at Dave_Bullis. So today's episode is with Joe Kowalski. Today we talk about YouTube, we talk about creating videos, and we also talk about his new movie, Billie Bob Joe. And you can also hear me butcher his name, a la John Travolta. So it's pretty exciting. So, all right, enough of me talking. Let's get to the interview with Joe Kowalski. Here it is, episode 67.
Please welcome the wickedly talented one and only Adele Dazeem.
You're listening to the Dave Bullis Podcast.
Hey everyone, thanks again for joining me for another episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast. Joining me today is Joe Kowalski. Joe can't even legally drink alcohol yet, and he's on my podcast. Joe has been making videos since he was 10 and hasn't stopped since. In 2011, Joe was made a YouTube partner, and his latest project, Billie Bob Joe, a comedy about two stepsisters who uncover a conspiracy about the people named Joe in the world and the people named Bob. Joe, how's everything out in Ohio?
Oh, it's going. I mean, it's Ohio. You get your cornfields. You got your strange patterns of weather. It's all about the same.
And you know what? I just realized I butchered your last name too.
Yeah,
it's Kowalski. Yeah, Kowalski. I knew because as soon as I heard you saw your last name, I was like, it's like the wrestler Killer Kowalski.
Yeah,
it's right in front of me too. I don't know what the man. That I had my John Travolta moment where remember he called her like what did he call that girl?
Oh yeah, because it was Dina Menzel. He called her like I don't even remember. It was bad enough that it sounded nothing like that. I do remember that part.
I just had that moment.
Adim Bazella or something like that. I don't know.
Well, I thought it was just so crazy. Like when he did it, it was just so off the wall, and it was just it was like nothing even close. You know what? This is going to bother me now. So before this is the show, and I just want to see what the hell he calls her name. What the hell was that? Adele Dazeem. Adele Dazeem.
Ah, that was it. Adele.
So I just
think, especially on a big national, moment like that. I mean, I don't know. Who knows what he was doing right beforehand, but.
Yeah, or he could have just been like me and just been like, "What the hell is going on?" Joe, something or other. But speaking of you, Joe, so why don't you can you give us a little bit about your background and how you sort of got into this whole film industry?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm pretty young, so I don't have an expansive background as of yet. Hopefully, I'm still in the process of creating it. But
no,
yeah,
it's great. It's great to have that, of different people of all different backgrounds on the show. So I welcome it.
Oh, thank you, and it really means a lot, having me on, especially considering I'm so young. But so I've lived in Ohio most of my life, and like you had mentioned, I've always had an interest when I was little. Not too atypical of many other people who eventually find themselves on YouTube, which has been kind of my main hobby for the past 5 years or so, and I actually worked briefly on a show called The Outdoor Option, which was nationally produced. It was an outdoor hunting show, which is not particularly relevant to my interest at all. But I mean, it was a great resume builder, especially having something on that big of a scale. It's currently on the Sportsman channel. I believe they're looking to move to Fox Sports, but I no longer work with them. But but since then I've done a last year I did a film called One Day, a musical, which was kind of like my first big production that I've created on my own. I wrote and directed it, and my dad and I wrote the songs together and stuff. But I've just done a lot in the Cleveland area, just kind of in the indie film circuit. I've worked on a lot of, like I said, indie films and web series, and been an extra in films that have been shot here, made for TV movies, and even some bigger movies and stuff. So I just really try to keep myself active doing something, no matter what it is, and really, really getting involved and trying to take advantage of the opportunities that come my way.
And that's a great way to look at it, is always be making something, always be creating content. So what are some of the movies that got shot in the area that you were background extra in?
Oh, there were a couple interesting things here and there. There was one, there was a TV movie called Love Finds You in Charm, Ohio, and it was an Amish love story. And yeah, so I'm just like a train passenger in that movie, in the background. There's also a movie starring Melissa Rauch from The Big Bang Theory, and she filmed a movie around here called The Bronze, which comes out in a couple months, and I was an extra for that. And just some things like there's a well-known local filmmaker named Johnny Woo who did this Doctor Who fan series. It's like a web series that he's been releasing, really, really high quality stuff. He puts a lot of work into making the special effects look pretty convincing and stuff like that. And I did some like behind the scenes help on that, and just a couple other things here and there. There was another short called Twinsberg, which was actually filmed at the Ohio has this actually a town called Twinsberg where they have a Twins Day festival, and it's literally just like the biggest convention of like twins at one point in time, and a pair of twins came here to film it, and I worked on that too. And a couple people on that team actually worked at Pixar, which is like a dream come true for me because I am a Pixar fanboy.
It's interesting because I wanted to mention to you, there was, I think it was either on Vimeo or YouTube, someone had posted a trailer they made as a tribute to Miyazaki, and he actually made sure to tweet it at the director of Toy Story 3, and the director of Toy Story 3 actually came back and actually said, if you want to, this is how you get the attention of people who work at Pixar, is to make something like this.
Oh yeah.
And just interesting that, I just wanted to mention that. But I mean, going back to the movies you were just talking about that you were an extra in, I mean, who doesn't love a good Amish love story?
It's very classic, and if you make fun of them at all in the movie, they're never going to see it. So you can probably get away with pretty much anything.
See, you're using your head now. See, it's like you can say whatever you want, and they'll never ever see it. So how did you, get into start making these YouTube videos? I mean, were you at your house one day and just decided, why not just do this?
Well, like I said, I'd kind of made a bunch of stuff already just for my own family and stuff like that, making parodies of TV shows or something like that, all this stuff that you would actually typically see on YouTube. And I had asked my parents several times before, but they were kind of paranoid at the thought, like, I don't know about this YouTube thing, and so eventually I kind of broke them down on it, and I posted some of the stuff I had already made, including, and actually the first thing I posted was an animation my sister and I had made together, where I was drawing it and coloring it and stuff, and she would help color them and cut it out and help me make backgrounds and stuff like that. And she's helped me with a lot of other of my productions, even up until this one. She's helped a bit on set and stuff like that. So I guess someone who works in, or wants to work in film and stuff like that, it's a very appealing thing to try and find an audience. It's very enthralling, and it's wonderful, this age that we live in. I mean, like, I wouldn't be able to make, say, the movie I'm making right now, probably even 5 years ago, given the technology or given the resources. And it's so cool to be at this point in time where just accessibility to digital media and just the internet as a whole, and being able to use that as a tool is I think it's just incredible. I think a lot of people take it for granted.
Yeah, and when back in 2010 when I first started crowdfunding, that's when people were like, "What the hell? What are you talking about? What is this?" And now everybody has crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah.
And just that ties in what you were just saying, because even a couple of years ago now, everything has moved so exponentially, and things have just evolved so quickly, and it's just amazing time to be a filmmaker.
I agree, and you can get it seen by. I mean, for example, we're gonna try to get our film into some film festivals and stuff like that. It's kind of sounds nice for the prestige of it and stuff. But if you really want to access viewers, putting it online makes a lot more sense. Even we're gonna take a risk with it, just in terms of we won't be eligible for some festivals because some of them are kind of picky about that. They kind of want to be the exclusive, distributor or whatever. But the internet is such a great place to try to, because you can just send a link and maybe someone watches 5 minutes or maybe they watch the whole thing, but you just have so much more potential to reach eyes and to reach out to the world, really.
And, a friend of mine, Jason Brubreaker, who's been on the show a couple of times before, when he worked at Distributor and Chill, he would actually find YouTubers, and he finally put together Camp Dakota, which was a movie starring just YouTube stars, and it was released.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yep, and then he put it together, and they released it just on Netflix. They didn't want to get it into a theater type distribution. They wanted exactly how it was consumed before. So you know what I mean. So since people were since their viewers are already used to going on the computer and watching media, that's how they wanted to release it. Which kind of brings to my next question is, do you feel that your age group is more inclined to watch YouTube over traditional TV?
I would definitely say it's leaning that way. I think there's a place for both. I know that, with kind of the commercialization of YouTube, people have been saying, oh, it's going to completely take over television. And I don't think that's necessarily how it works, just as television did not take over movies, although it certainly seemed that way for a time. I think it's still just such a new medium that people are still trying to understand how to use it and to do things with it. And so you're starting to kind of see, like I said, that commercialization where people are able to sniff it out, though. You can tell a lot of these big companies who are trying to kind of get in on the YouTube trend as they see it, it comes across as fake, and it comes across as ungenuine, but I think the genuineness of a person uploading their own work to YouTube is kind of what appeals to people in the first place. It's not this big kind of corporate product. It has the potential, at least, to be much more a personal and more creator driven sort of medium, I guess.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the reason too of the appeal is that it just they got rid of the gatekeepers.
Yeah, exactly. And just as a whole, I guess, relevant to what you're saying, I think, you see lots of people cutting the cords, especially with the advent of stuff like Netflix and Hulu and just pirating in general. It's so much easier to access these things that before, like you said, you had to have the gatekeepers, and just for the people creating and for the people enjoying the work. It's very freeing, and it's we can only hope that it stays that way, unlike you see things like SOPA trying to stifle that a bit.
Yeah, and that's an interesting take on it as well, because somebody once told me this. Let me see if I can get this right. Don't build your property on rented space. And basically what they meant was, social media can just, if we're on Twitter and we've got 10 million followers, Twitter tomorrow can just simply change the rules, and they don't owe us an explanation or anything, because, it's free. So that is, that is something I've always kept in the back of my mind, because at first I didn't understand what she meant by that, but now I get that. And that's what I'm what you were just talking about is I hope that YouTube and Vimeo stay the way they are. I know Vimeo is changing a few things here and there, but YouTube, I know, was just getting some flack from the YouTube partners because, like guys like I guess Pewdiepie or a couple of people I think were based on the new algorithms weren't going to make as much money as before. I think that was something. There was a little bit of backlash against YouTube for that, and I think they maybe recanted that. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, but what the deal was, it's been a very gradual thing, but it's been a little bit more obvious as of late, where YouTube/Google were giving a much larger percentage of the advertising profits over to the people creating the videos, and they've been kind of slowly whittling away at that and kind of taking away and taking more for themselves. Which, I mean, on one hand, I can see it's fair enough that, they don't have to necessarily share any of the advertising revenue at all. So on one hand, that's generous that they're doing it at all. But at the same time, it is infuriating to some of these people, not myself, but like the really, really big people who have made their careers off of YouTube, and so that's the thing. Like you said, they've kind of been forced to spread out. They get book deals, or they get, they work on several other platforms, or sometimes even get hired to help on TV shows or movies and stuff like that. And so I think in order to be a successful YouTuber, someone who can live off of it, you have to have all these other streams of revenue, such as merchandise and stuff like that. You wouldn't be able to live just off of the advertising revenue anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of where YouTube actually was starting to say, wait a minute, we need to actually rethink this. Because, I know a lot of people, are actually ingrained now to look for videos from people like I forget her name, but the people, but just going back to Pewdiepie, guys like him, they're so used to a certain drop date, almost like a TV show of, hey, it's Friday afternoon, where's the latest Pewdiepie video? And if that's not there, I think YouTube realized they risk of people just going, well, I'm going to bounce off this site now and go somewhere else.
Yeah, and PewDiePie is an example of someone who's probably still protected no matter what, simply because he is the most successful person on the site right now. He's literally a millionaire. It's crazy. I think there's just some report that came out that said he was worth like several $1 million or something like that. But his method works well. I don't really prefer his videos myself, but he has created an enormous fan base, and he does it in a way where he can release like 20 videos a week or whatever, very kind of simple, goofy kind of gaming videos and stuff. And it's very easy for him to make that quick sort of, videos and stuff like that. And I have to give him credit for it. Although I don't like his stuff, I still respect the fact that he was able to make it work for him. I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I first heard about him through South Park, and you hear that South Park episode, and I said, "Oh, this is a real kid," and yeah, I can see why some of his videos are popular. Definitely not my cup of tea, but I mean, I don't think I'm his demographic anyway. I think he's more into, like, the teenagers and stuff like that, like people still in like middle school, I think. Yeah. But hey, I mean, he's a multimillionaire, and I mean, I was just using him as an example. Obviously, when you're the top person in any industry or any field or whatever, you're always going to be used as an example. Sure. It's kind of like LeBron in basketball, right? So, I wanted to, as before I move on, I want to talk about, your movie. I want to ask you a couple more things about YouTube.
Sure.
And I wanted to ask you, what are your plans, for YouTube for you in terms of constantly getting a new audience? I mean, are you constantly like trying new videos out, or trying new series out, or maybe even doing like a web series of some kind?
Well, I guess when I first started, like I said, about a little over 5 years ago now, you always think, well, maybe I'll have that viral video or something like that. So even though I was making things for myself, I still always kind of harbored that little secret notion that, well, maybe one of these will take off. And there's been ones that have been more successful than others, but nothing, I would say, viral. Whereas now I feel like I haven't had quite as much time as of late, what with this film, but I do want to get back to a more regular schedule. But I honestly have reached the point where I think it's just making videos that I would want to see, and that's the hard thing. Is it's hard because there's over 300 hours of video uploaded to YouTube every minute, which I find astounding. It's hard to do anything that really sticks out much anymore, unless it's really, really bad or just insanely good. And sometimes not even those get seen. It's just a matter of just being in the right spot at the right time, and then you have your 35 seconds of fame or whatever. But so as of late, I've been doing a lot more like interviews with people, whereas before I was doing a lot more of comedy sketches and the like, which I still want to keep doing. But I've kind of had more of an interest as of late about kind of hearing people's stories and viewing the world from their eyes, and just trying to bring that out to a public setting where people can see, it's not just me getting something out of it. It's other people, hopefully too, understanding this perspective and seeing people as three-dimensional, which I think is a really, really important thing to internalize.
Yeah, and very true. And, one of the things that I've been doing on YouTube is I've been trying different things as well. And I'm always interested to talk about, to other people, about what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. And, again, I think that's the thing, too, is everyone's trying to get that viral video. And I think everyone is sort of walking up to the plate, so to speak, and trying just to swing for a home run every single time.
Yeah.
And I think that's more detrimental than anything.
Yeah, and then people who do achieve viral fame out of nowhere and stuff, they don't really know what to do with it after that. They either have to try to replicate that success somehow again, or I think it's better to kind of have smaller successes that build up to bigger successes, or at least I find that probably more gratifying in the long run. I mean, obviously I'd be happy if I had a video that suddenly did go viral or something like that. That'd be really exciting. But that's not necessarily my goal. I mean, I have a small audience, and hopefully I can keep making stuff that at least gets seen by some people and enjoyed by some people. And every now and then I'll get some new people coming in, or I'll have a video that does a little bit better. And like I said, that's very gratifying. But it's kind of more of a personal thing at this point.
Yeah, and I mean and I think that's the way to do it too. Is is to get, like, I was just talking about the analogy of the home run, and every time you're up to bat, you're trying to hit that home run. I think also people need to get rid of that idea that they're going to make like their first video or their whatever, their crowdfunding campaign with one single push of a button, with one upload or one tweet, they're going to raise $1 million, or with one push of a button, they're going to upload to YouTube and they're going to get 1 million hits overnight. And literally they're going to wake up the next day and be like, holy crap, I created a viral video, and they quit their job and just sort of.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, funny enough, Joe, that actually has happened. People have created viral videos and just quit their job and been like, I'm a YouTuber now full time. Now what?
Oh, yeah.
Now what do I do?
Exactly. And like they haven't built up, like I was saying, even some of the big professional YouTube people who garnered, they had to garner these huge audiences before they decide to quit their job, or else they don't have, like we were saying before, the merchandise, and they don't have the the audience that'd be willing to support them if they start a new project or something like that. I mean, who's going to really want to, like, how often do you hear about the double rainbow guy or something like that, like someone who's garnered that brief internet fame, and maybe they were able to make a little money off of it, but I don't think they build fan bases necessarily, and that's really what you need to sustain an online career, because there's no certainty. It doesn't matter how successful you are, there's no certainty when you're trying to make money online.
Yeah, and when Taj.0, he's gone through all those viral video web redemptions, and I don't know if he's sort of running out of people, but I mean, he's had all the famous ones on there, from Chocolate Rain, he's had on the Double Rainbow guy,
right?
But as I've noticed, Comedy Central's sort of like attaching their trailer to Amy Schumer now. So I mean, I like Taj.0, but I'm just I really wonder, because I was watching an episode and I was wondering, man, he's going to run out of people that have a big enough viral video that people know who the hell they are. And entertaining enough. Because, funny enough, and just a little side story, a friend of mine actually used to represent the Numa Numa guy. Do you remember him?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and he used to represent him, and they would go off and like do conventions and stuff like that. And my friend of mine actually just got interviewed for this project where this guy from Europe is trying to become a viral video star in America. It's basically a documentary. So I just wanted to – I brought that up because it's just interesting to see, now there's going to be a documentary of some kind. I mean, I don't know how well it's going to be, how well publicized it's going to be, but it would it's just interesting, though, that who Numa Numa guy was, because most people who I say, they were like, what? Because that was the early days of viral videos.
Yeah, that was about, 9 or 10 years ago or something like that now.
Yeah. And but I'm going to post on the show notes, everybody. I'm going to post a link to that just in case anybody doesn't know who the Numa Numa guy is. But speaking of somebody who's not the Numa Numa guy, Joe, I want to talk to you about your project, Billie Bob Joe. So,
Sure.
So could you just give us a little more synopsis, as to what of the movie?
Yeah, essentially it's kind of two stories that kind of intertwine between each other. On the one hand, we kind of have this PBS-style mockumentary talking about this fake conspiracy that we invented about how the people in the world named Joe are secretly at war with the people in the world named Bob. So we go through the whole history about how, say, bobbing for apples came from a time when Joes used to try to drown Bobs underwater to keep them quiet, or how terms like average Joe or sloppy Joe were invented by the Bobs to slander the Joe name, and so we go into this whole kind of fictional timeline, kind of humorously, but in a way that kind of skewers prejudice, I guess, if you will. It's all done in a very goofy way, but it kind of has that undertone underneath that we're trying to show how ridiculous it is, And but then we also tell the story of these two stepsisters who are making this documentary, and we kind of learn about their lives, and we learn about their relationship with each other and how making this film kind of brings them together again. And we have our one character, she's Billie, she's the titular character, and she's very excitable and passionate and kind of almost verging on whimsical. And then we have Custodia, who's her stepsister, who's a little bit more of the more reasonable and kind of kind of more taking the more behind the scenes kind of role in it, and so it's essentially the story of these two sisters, really. I mean, even though the movie's, like I said, about this wacky conspiracy, the real heart of the story is about these two sisters.
And that's a very interesting concept. And so, where did this concept actually come from?
Well, I guess it could really go back to my little sister, Becca. Well, she's not too little anymore. She's going off to college this year. But when she was little, like little kids always make up like different lyrics to songs and stuff like that. And there was that one Schoolhouse Rock song about the Revolutionary War, and they talk about the shot heard around the world. It was the start of the revolution and everything. And she started changing the word revolution to Joe-olution, just because like that's what little kids do. But then it kind of became a family joke, and we started wondering, well, what would a Joe-olution be? We started, it'd be the Joes against the Bobs and their Bob-olution. And so we over time it kind of became this thing where we were kind of making up this fictional timeline anyway. And so that was kind of easy to call from. And when I was thinking of things to make a movie about, I was like, there's already kind of a story here. I just need to figure out what it is. And that was kind of the rough inspiration for it.
So that's an interesting way to come up with a movie idea too. But inspiration, is everywhere, and that's great that you were able to turn this into a script. So at what point did you start actually putting pen to paper and start writing a script out for this?
Well, after I finished my musical production that I mentioned before, I was kind of burnt out to the point where I didn't want to think about writing and stuff like that. So I kind of waited a couple months until I started to feel the inspiration. And it was really slow going at first, but then once I start kind of getting a concept down a little bit, I'll just run with it. And typically I don't like to do a lot of planning when I write. I just usually kind of write and see where it goes. Maybe I have a couple story points in my head, and then once I get the first draft done, then I just rip it apart and I'm writing over and over to refine it into something I think that would be a good thing to see on the screen,
Now, so when you got done writing the script, now did you pass it around to people and say, what did you think of this, or did you sort of keep this one close to the chest?
Well, the first person I turned to for my last one was my dad, and my dad has a lot of great ideas, but sometimes we have different viewpoints on things, very, very strong viewpoints, different from each other. So I knew if I really wanted the honest truth and I wanted a different perspective that wasn't my own, I definitely could turn to him. And he has a good sense of story as well. So, there were some things I would say I took about half of his suggestions, and he had some really good ideas about how to make a character a bit better and stuff like that. And then half of them he was really pushing for, but I just had to say, no, this is really an element I want to keep, and there were certain things that I really, really wanted to keep, and I think actually turned out quite well.
Okay, and that's excellent, and what I wanted to ask you too, though, is when you were making, at that point, when you had your script done and everything else, did you ever think about crowdfunding this?
Actually, we did do some crowdfunding for it. Now, we did some crowdfunding for my last project as well. Raised about $1,200, and for this one we raised about $1,500, which isn't really a lot, of course, but in the scheme of things. But for me, that's a good chunk to work with, because I always know that I'm going to end up kind of funneling most of my paychecks into the movie. So I would say the whole budget probably came to about $3.5 grand, including my own contributions, just from working and stuff like that. I'm using the majority of the paychecks on that. But that's the thing. I I know you've talked about crowdfunding a bit on some of your other interviews and stuff. And like we were mentioning before, that's a really, really good platform. But it certainly helps if you have a really, really huge audience already established. And I've had, like I said, I have a small audience. So I was able to kind of pull some weight with that. But it wasn't like, like a runaway success or anything. And like I said, I'm really happy with the money I was able to get from it. And we made it work within our means.
Yeah, that whole crowdfunding strategy and campaign, running a campaign, I could talk ad nauseum about that. But, the size of your audience does count. There's a really good article, which I'll link to, called 1,000 True Fans, which is probably the starting point where I usually point a lot of people to.
I've heard of that concept, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just – that's why whenever I'm talking about, social media, anything, I always tell people not to get lost in analytics, because like there's vanity matrix, there's vanity, and it's sort of like what's also called Chinese math, which is like, if you and I said, okay, listen, we were crowdfunding a project and we need, let's say we need $10 million. Well, we say, hey, listen, there's 300 and some odd people in America. If blah, 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 if they buy and we'll give $1. And that type of ideas, that's where it kind of gets lost. And it originally comes from people always saying about China, hey, they got 1 billion people, and if 10% buy our product, well, hell, that'll pay for it itself in no time. So that's where the whole version of Chinese math came from. But I'm glad that you actually went on actually did your own campaign. Did you choose Kickstarter or Indiegogo?
I went with Indiegogo because I like the notion about the flexible funding, where even if you don't reach your goal, you still get a nice portion of what you were raising. Whereas I feel like Kickstarter is probably better for people who are a little more certain that they're going to reach the goal.
Yeah, I know Kickstarter can be a little, I guess, intimidating because it is all or nothing. It's right. And if your goal is $10,000 and you raise $9,999, you don't get anything.
Right.
So
exactly.
that has, and I've seen that happen before, where at the tail end, $1 or a couple have been the crunch point. So
right.
And also, I've had different people on here from Indiegogo on, I think there's pros and cons of each one, and it's just I think at the end of the day, it really depends where your crowd is. Some people actually prefer Indiegogo, some people prefer Kickstarter, for a number of reasons. But the next project I'm going to do, Joe, I'm probably going to choose Kickstarter.
Okay.
But I won't go into that now. I don't want to. I mean, this is about you, and I want to talk more about Billie Bob Joe. So then when you crowdfunded it, how long was it before you actually started shooting it?
Actually, we started shooting it even before we started the campaign. And one reason for that was so that, first of all, we kind of had some stuff to share with people on like the Facebook page that we had. We would put a link at the bottom of, after we'd post the pictures, we'd say, and if you want to help this movie get made completely, we're 20% funded or whatever, come over to the link and toss in a few bucks or whatever. And that seemed to be somewhat effective. We got some people coming from that aspect of it. And actually the whole film actually has been done in a pretty tight amount of time. I started writing the screenplay around October, and then we cast people around February, I think it was, and then we were filming from February up until about a week ago. And I've been editing as I go along, which I really, really enjoy editing. So I spend a good portion of time, because people have said, well, your movie's premiering in a month and we're filming for it. And I was like, yeah, pretty much.
So, did you have a whole crew with you, or was it like a really, really small skeleton crew?
We had a solid, we had a good group of people, and then some people that would help for a couple times and they wouldn't be able to, and we kind of had people kind of floating in and out. thankfully, I'm pretty close to some people who are really reliable and really, really great to work with. My one friend, Brian Clark, who I worked with my last one, has helped a lot with just every aspect of production. And then his girlfriend helped a lot with it. And then my own girlfriend, she did like hair and makeup and did some props and art and stuff like that. And so, and then just like I said, a big group of other people. Our cast has turned out being much bigger than our crew. We had probably, if you're looking at the crew credits, a lot of it is like, like this person designed a poster or this person did an animation for us and stuff like that. Whereas I think altogether, including all of our little brief, because it is this documentary style, I wanted a lot of heads. I think we have over 80 people listed in the cast.
And that sometimes ends up happening. But because I've seen the trailer for it, and I know I could completely understand, how you quickly got up to 80 people in the cast.
Right.
And so, how did you go about casting it too?
Actually, well, for my last production, I know I keep referencing it, but this is only my second real big production that I've created on my own. With the last one, I was basically went up to my friends and I was like, "You're in my movie. Here's a script. Come on." Whereas for this one, we actually did set up local auditions and kind of over in the Cleveland area. And we put a bunch of things online, and while we put stuff up and physical pieces of paper on buildings and stuff like that, the most effective thing was doing it online. And there was a lot of different resources that we culled from, and we got about 25 people or so to show up, and we gave them all a role in some capacity. The lesser ones might have, but I think for our main 4 cast members is the two sisters and actually 2 brothers, both in real life and in the movie. It wasn't made that way, but they were both really, really good for the characters, so we made their characters brothers as well, who helped them make the fictional movie. I have just been so fortunate to work with them because, especially I feel like with a lot of indie movies, sometimes it's very difficult to find strong talents. And I was really fortunate in finding what I feel are 4 very strong actors who haven't necessarily even really done a whole lot yet, but are just perfect for the parts. And I'm really, really thankful because having a bad main actor or actress could, I'm sure, I've seen so many independent films where that's just destroyed it.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually just talking to somebody too about, if you even have the best script in the world and, the best set design, if the acting isn't there, I mean, everyone is just immediately taken out of the movie.
Oh, yeah. And then in reverse, maybe having really, really good actors can help, at least I think in our respects, look around maybe some of our technical limitations. We don't have a Paramount Pictures budget or anything like that. So obviously there's going to be some things that might seem somewhat, a little bit more amateur, I guess, if you will. Although we've tried very hard to make the film look good based off of what we have,
Oh yeah, and I like you said, this is your second feature, and your second project, and I really, am just ecstatic because you should always keep going, always keep creating, and don't let any type of limitation stop you, because creativity is really, should be worried about money, because money can always be everyone always says if I have more money, money's not always a gift, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right. And sometimes I think some of the best creations are made through limitations. It's like when you give someone an assignment to write a short story or something. Sometimes the greatest work comes out of trying to, have a couple of those fences or having a couple of those inhibitors to really focus it and make you think of ideas that you wouldn't have thought of if you just had complete free reign.
Yeah, very true. And, I've reading all the great directors and everything else, sometimes not having the money has really made them think outside the box. And but sometimes obviously they do want more money. Like John Carpenter has always said, he was the guy who would make a movie for $3 million and it would make like 30-some million and more and more. And finally he said, I want, can I move up? Can I start getting more than $3 million to make a movie? So, eventually you do want to, at least a little more. So maybe a little more explosions or something, or a little more set design, or make the monster a little more this or whatever. But yeah, and I think it's really, I think it's just going to end up getting better and better, especially for everyone starting their own sort of, following, like you and I are doing, and just sort of, seeing, all these people, what they're creating, because eventually, when all the other directors who are in their 50s, 60s now, when they retire, these studios, they're not going to really who else they're going to rely on. Now, granted, there'll always be people who want to work for them,
right?
But I think in the future, will they be as big? I'm not sure, and that's something that we'll have to see. What are your thoughts on that, Joe?
I guess it's just interesting to see how that runs as a whole, because I think we are in a really huge transition point for kind of like what we were mentioning before, for all of media, really. And so I think, well, even if you look at like what is getting the big money anymore, back in the day, the big draw was the actors, that was the main thing pulling in people. And then around the 90s, you have the special effects drawing people in, and now we really have, it's not so much the actors and the special effects can be big helps to it, but it's really these previously established
properties.
Yeah, properties really that are making the big money. You look at something like Marvel, who have done a great job of building a, as they term it, a universe around their films and building up that fan base. So but they're still kind of mixing in these names like Joss Whedon directing the Avenger films, and still trying to bring in some of that kind of fresh mindedness, even if you can tell they're still kind of under the limitations of the big, Disney studio sort of restrictions and stuff like that. I'm glad that there's still kind of trying at least to bring in a bit more of that freshness, because I think we're in an interesting time where it seems like a lot of the films that are getting big are the ones that are actually fairly critically acclaimed. And I realize that there's always going to be crap no matter what if you look at the history of film, but we only remember the good movies. There was all kinds of crap being made in the 70s and 80s, even though there were just some absolute, genius masterpieces being made at that time too. And I think now, like I said, I think it's interesting. I feel like more and more, and I think that comes from just people wanting more. They're tired. They're starting to get tired of seeing the same old thing. I think a good example is that movie Pixels that just came out with Adam Sandler, which really didn't do very well, despite having the huge special effects, despite having the huge stars and stuff like that. But people picked up really early that it wasn't a good movie. It just wasn't good, and it was kind of regressive in its story and in its characters. A bit more outdated, and I think it's kind of interesting that a movie that you would have thought would have done exceptionally well given all the previous rules really didn't do that well.
Yeah, I part of me also thinks that maybe there was some backlash to Adam Sandler. I had friends who actually went and saw Pixels, and they all agreed they unanimously hated it. They just said it wasn't right. They just did not like it at all. When I look at the Marvel Universe lineup and I see there's so many more superhero movies coming out, so many Star Wars movies coming out, I don't blame them, because if that's what is hot and that's what people are going to see, you obviously want to keep making that. You want to keep making that money. I mean, so can you really blame them? Because I mean, once
Right.
these superhero movies, I think once they start to taper off, then it will go back. I mean, there are still phenomenal independent movies coming out. It's just, the box office, in recent years especially, you see what wins Best Picture or, what wins Best Screenplay. And some people have just, in the general, public, they've never seen, some of these movies.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, last year, the Grand Budapest Hotel won Best Screenplay by Wes Anderson, and the Best Picture went to Birdman. So,
yeah. Both very great films.
Oh, phenomenal! I've actually had Alex Delaris, who wrote Birdman. He was one of the co-writers of Birdman. He actually was on the podcast before.
Oh, I'll have to check that one out. I didn't see that one.
Yeah, that's I forget what episode number, but he is phenomenal, and he gives a lot of great writing advice.
And I think I see it because I see that they need the tent poles, more than ever, because that's really what's bringing it in. I guess as long as the tent poles are being created with care, and that they seem to have been increasingly created with, and they're telling great stories and stuff like that, I could see them still coexisting among the independent films. I just hope that there's still going to be a voice for independent films in the future. I just hope that it's still happening. And of course, it will always happen to some capacity, but I hope they don't fall by the wayside entirely or anything.
Yeah, and I don't think they will. I think there'll always be a place for independent films. I think that, I think everything's cyclical because, I think eventually TV also, they will get burned out on TV because, a lot of this stuff now, everyone's going to TV, with Game of Thrones and True Detective.
Yeah, and that's getting a lot of acclaim.
Yeah, and I think eventually you will see everything going sort of back to, movies. It's funny, when I was talking about this to, I forget who it was, but he said the last movie that he remembers that won Best Picture where everyone agreed that it was the best picture was Pulp Fiction back in 92, which was before you were born, by the way.
Right.
I was 8 years old at the time. That was probably the last movie that really everyone agreed on. And, I was hard pressed to disagree with them because, I of all the movies that are winning, Best Picture, a lot of the majority of the general public has not seen these movies.
Yeah, and I think part of that, too, is also the Academy being somewhat, they kind of have the stigma now being the old white guys, like you look at something like in 2010, Best Picture, you had something like the King's Speech, which was a very, very great film, but it was up against The Social Network, which is a little bit more daring, was a little bit more took some more chances, I felt, and I felt like it did it very successfully. And it was kind of neck and neck, but of course they kind of went with the one that was a little bit more safe, and I think that's part of it too. As I think like I said, I really enjoyed the King's Speech, but it feels like sometimes they're pushing kind of the safe films,
Yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about. I sometimes think, too, that if it's a split, like if you know what I mean, and sometimes movies can sneak in that way. And I don't know if that's the right adjective, sneak, but you know what I mean. Like if they're stuck between A and B, well, it's a push and C wins. If you know what I mean.
Right.
And I sometimes think they find themselves in that predicament as well. I actually thought that was going to happen a couple years ago, but it didn't, and again, I think the Academy is they say they're out of touch. I can see where some people feel that way. But I think lately, especially with the production of the Oscars, that is especially safe. They are, I think that whoever the producers are know that their hands are tied because they can't push the envelope because everyone in America is offended about everything nowadays. So basically, they want to make this a G-rated show that the kids can watch, the grandparents can watch, and everyone will leave without being offended at something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they'll bring out someone like someone who's not going to ruffle feathers, Anne Hathaway and stuff like that. That's why I really admired when the Golden Globes had Ricky Gervais. I thought that was quite a brilliant thing to do, and I think it paid off well.
Yeah, I remember watching that live, and somebody actually tweeted out that they thought he was fired during mid-show. because he was gone for like a while. Like, you didn't see Ricky Gervais for a while, and somebody actually tweeted out, like, did he? I think he may have gotten fired off stage and been like, just go home. But no, he came back on, and but yeah, ever since that though, I don't think they've had even when I watch stuff on like Spike TV had their Guy Awards. I think that's who has the Guy Awards. Even when I see something like that, it's a safe telecast. Like, there's nothing shocking. MTV did the shot. Miley Cyrus, twerking with Robin Thicke. Honestly, I didn't find that shocking at all. I just thought it was a train wreck.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be shocking. I think it just has to be something fresh, I guess. Because, like you said, it's all very formulaic. It's all everyone patting themselves on the back, and it's all the same kind of things. You're celebrating the actors and actresses who may very much deserve that. But then all the stuff like the special effects team and the sound editors and stuff are kind of shuffled way to the bottom, and it's not so much a party for them, really. It's kind of celebrating these figureheads that you see all the time,
Yeah, and the reason I said it was shocking was, that's what everyone was sort of. The next day, everyone was talking about it, and they're like, "Oh, the MTV, VMAs went way too far," blah blah blah. And honestly, like, I just thought it was a train wreck more than anything. And I'm sitting there going, "What are they offended about?" I'm not quite, getting this,
right?
Because it was just to me, it was just whatever. But they used to have very different, people who host the Oscars. And when Billy Crystal used to host it, I think that was sort of like the go-to guy for a while. And, maybe tastes have changed, and I think people, but again, I think the producers know that they have to play it safe regardless of whatever their humor is, and they have to sort of get somebody. I would have said Bill Cosby, but obviously they're never going to get Bill Cosby to do anything ever again. But somebody even maybe like Jerry Seinfeld, or somebody just, who will come out there and say a few jokes. Because I think Tina Fey and Amy Poehler did a great job. And
oh yeah, I thought they were terrific, and I thought that was kind of that freshness that I think people were kind of looking for. And like I said, it wasn't like anything like super earth shattering that they did, but they were just good at it. They were very, very good at it, and they made it feel kind of fresh again, I thought.
Yes, I agree. So I forget how we got on this whole topic to begin with, Joe, but
it's long train of consciousness.
Yeah, I was like, wait, weren't we just talking about Billie Bob Joe, and now we're so anyways, Joe, speaking of Billie Bob Joe, you have a premiere coming up, correct?
Yeah, we're holding. Well, we like I said, we do want to eventually maybe do some film festivals and stuff down the line. But our big premiere is happening in the Cleveland area at a theater called the Cedar Lee. And they're pretty well known locally by us for being very supportive of independent film and for being very supportive of the film community in general. And that's if in the rare chance that you're over by the Cleveland area, we're doing it August 16th at 7 p.m. at the Cedar Lee Theater in Cleveland Heights. And it's sure to be a merry time for all. Will be half of our merchandise, and also what people want to donate will also go to a charity called Dress for Success, which helps low-income women find job opportunities, and help them prepare for them and stuff like that. So that's an additional reason to come. But the event itself is just kind of pay what you want, just because we're basically going to use the money to pay back the Indiegogo prizes and hopefully get to some other film festivals.
Very cool, and I will link to that in the show notes, everybody. And in closing, Joe, we did have one question come in on the Twitter. The Twitter Q&A was ask him about his current family nicknames other than Poggi.
Oh, Well, that's probably my sister then in that case. She sometimes calls me Little Gitta for reasons unknown to me, and also Widow Gitta, which I don't know what either of those mean, but they are both nicknames that I have from my family now. But Poji, yes, did start out as a childhood nickname, and I kind of used it when I was starting my YouTube account.
Yeah, that was your sister who asked that, but Becca?
Yeah, that's her.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, wouldn't it have been funny if it was like some random dude from like the middle of America, and like I should have said his name's like John Simpson or something. I mean, like, like how does this guy know?
The guy from Missoula, Michigan, who stalks me and he hangs outside my window.
Yeah, he wants to know. He has some questions for you. Like keep the blinds open. He's got hobbies too.
I mean, he's fairly friendly though. I toss him a couple peanuts or snacks when he's not being too weird.
Well, that's good, Joe. You got a good heart, buddy.
Well, thank you.
So, Joe, we've been talking for about an hour. In closing, is there any final thoughts you sort of have to sort of put a period at the end of this whole conversation?
I just want to say that I really want to thank you for having me on. It really means a lot to have any exposure for this movie. Like I said, I've been working on it pretty consistently for almost a year now, which I mean isn't that long in the scheme of things, but it's a very personal project to me. Like I said, it's something that I feel is kind of different. I can't really claim whether it's good or bad. I have to wait till other people decide that. But I think it's at least different. And one thing I definitely want to do too is like have a couple strong female leads to the film too, which I feel is kind of underdone sometimes. I feel like there's more of an interest in it as of late with things like Frozen and Pitch Perfect and stuff like that are really pushing more female leads. But really having characters who are three-dimensional, and not, you don't really have like a romantic plot line or anything that is, I don't know, I feel like is done far too often when there is the occasional female lead and stuff like that. And like I said, both our actresses are extraordinarily talented, and I do hope you check out the film, which will also be on YouTube, actually, on my YouTube page on August 23rd at Pogie Joe, Pogie Joe. And on the 23rd, you can go check it out and see all of our hard work.
Awesome. And I will link to your YouTube page also in the show notes. And, it was my pleasure having you on. And, John Maslowski is the one who introduced us. So I want to give a shout out to John. And,
yeah, definitely. He's been fantastic to work with, really.
Yeah, John is a great guy, and he's always I always see him popping up with like new things and always helping out with somebody, and I think that's phenomenal. And that he's a guy who always puts his money where his mouth is, and that's very important, especially in independent film. Is obviously helping people out and getting the word out. It's just really important. And he just finished up the Walking Full documentary, which I'm very eager to see. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too.
Yeah, that is a a guy hates his soul-crushing, life-sucking job, and he just decides to walk across the country and make a movie about it. That speaks to volumes to me, because I have seen so many people, myself included, take a job that they absolutely hate, and it just ends up killing you and mentally and physically and creatively, and you end up just it's just sort of like and you say to yourself, how the hell did it come to this? And that's a whole nother story for another time, my little story about that. But that's why I think more and more people are realizing now in this freelance sharing economy that's on the rise. I think you're going to see more and more of these big companies are going to have to really roll out the red carpet for employee perks just to get the people they want. Right now I know friends who are coders all over America and Europe, and some of the perks they get are just unreal. And I think eventually they're even going to have to up those up, because you're going to have people say, why would I work for your company when I could just, maybe I won't make as much money, but I'll have a hell of a lot more freedom. I could be in China and I could do this coding. I could be, and I don't need to report to anybody, except, So, and I can, and, Upwork.com is an amazing freelance website. I have found freelancers through there. Not to give a plug.
I was going to say freelancer.com. I've actually found a lot of things on there too, and it's amazing. Just the vast amount of talent on there. You post something and you literally get responses within a couple minutes. You start seeing people trying to get that whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and but definitely check out Upwork too.
Okay.
It used to be called Odesk.
I have to look into that. Yeah.
I love it. I love their interface. I love the fact that you can track whatever the freelancer's doing. So meaning like the freelancer wants to get paid, they have to show that they've been working on your project. They can't just be like,
oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so that way they can't just say like, hey Joe, I worked 20 hours, give me money. They have to prove what they were working on.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea, because sometimes I outsource things that are beyond my abilities. I actually one example, kind of an extreme example, is I did a whole little music album, and I'm not much of a musician, but I basically outsourced people to help me make this, and it ended up being kind of a neat little experiment about someone who can barely do music making a music album.
Hey, you know what? I say go for it. When I started this podcast, I had a ton of people tell me no one will listen to it. No one's, why are you going to waste your time? And now, my analytics, I've been listened to in every single state in America. I've been listened to on all 6 continents, obviously not Antarctica. I have been, it's all over now. And I'm like, these people are the ones who said, why would anyone want to listen to your podcast? Well, somebody's listening to them, because the numbers don't lie. So, honestly, man, just always be creating content.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I was amazed when I looked you up and have like 60 something episodes and counting. I mean, a lot of people, especially with podcasts and stuff where it's easy to kind of drop them off over time. Like I give you so much credit for being able to sustain that. I think it's phenomenal what you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Well, as a surprise, this is the last episode.
It was a nice run.
Yeah. Sorry to end it on that, but I'm packing it up. No, I'm just kidding, everyone. It's not the last episode. I actually have a ton of episodes in the bank that I haven't even released yet. I actually went on like a binge one week, and I ended up doing like 10 or so interviews, and
oh wow.
Yeah, and I still have all those to go through. This Wednesday, I'm actually interviewing the guy who co-created The Onion, the newspaper.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Yeah, I'm interviewing him because he's actually in the film industry now. And,
cool.
I'm going to be talking to him. So I've got a ton of really, really cool guests lined up. And
I really liked your one with Bill Plimpton. That was fantastic.
Oh, yeah, Bill was great. I was actually a little shocked that he said yes. But I actually knew 2 people who knew him, and I was like, put in a good word for me, lie, and tell him I'm talented and charming. And it worked, and and I still keep in contact with him, which is phenomenal.
That's amazing. He's a legend.
Yes, he is. And when we get off, I'll tell you, there's 2 people I'm trying to get right now that I'm hoping will come on, and they're legends also, and it'll be amazing to have them on here. But Joe Kowalski, I want to say thank you very much for coming on, and it was a pleasure. And everyone, again, I will have all of Joe's links in the show notes, and you can always find me at davebullis.com, at Twitter. It's at Dave_Bullis. And Joe, I want to wish you the best of luck with Billie Bob Joe. And I really hope it's a success, and I look forward to seeing you on YouTube.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the extra special extended interview.
Oh, no problem at all. I'm going to cut out 95% of it, and it'll just be
guttural sounds of me going.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll be like, "Well, that was a good point, Joe." Well. All right.
We brought on this Aboriginian filmmaker who's going to talk to us on the didgeridoo.
It'll be like the episode of The Simpsons where that guy was interviewing Homer Simpson. It was obviously an edited tape that he was talking to.
Oh, yeah.
But, Joe, again, thanks again for coming on. And, best of luck to you, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Find Dave at davebullis.com. Please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.